So I'm really pleased to be here at the Aboyne Bridge with Dave Robinson today, on the same day that we're having the drop-in session at the Scout Hall in Aboyne, for really detailed consideration and an update at the drop-in session with local councillors, council officers, and getting some feedback as to where we are. I just wondered, just as a preliminary question, Dave, what I was going to ask you. Dave is a firefighter, he's a local businessman, he's also behind part of the action group dealing with this issue. What I wanted to ask you, Dave, was that the way I see things is that historically the council, rightly or wrongly, has very much focused on looking at assets like bridges in terms of what they're worth on the balance sheet.
Yep.
And that's been a focus, and that has its place. But what has been missing, Dave, it seems to me, in that analysis is there's not really been a serious look at monitoring structurally, physically, the state that we're in terms of our budget, in terms of our bridges. And because what's happening here is obviously applying elsewhere, and that's the increased flooding that we're having and climate change and all the rest of it. But there's not been that historical analysis around monitoring, either in terms of funding of that or the expert analysis. But any of your thoughts today as we stand here on Aboyne Bridge would be most appreciated, Dave.
Okay. Yeah, welcome to share my thoughts. I think you're right. I think the conversation thus far around the bridge being closed has focused on the money to repair it, and it's focused on the financial impact to businesses, not so much the financial impact on homes, on people, and it is having a financial impact on homes and people. But there's the social aspect as well. There are people now who are socially isolated because of the bridge closure. And we also, and I think we maybe touch on this as we talk, there are also safety concerns as well.
So, Dave, that's really interesting, and I think it's really important that that's included in the discussion that we have today and going forward, because my understanding from constituents that have approached me is that there are serious concerns around health and safety aspects, and you are at the forefront locally, being a local firefighter, to maybe make some comment in a personal capacity with regard to that. I have also had a number of people on the doors that have suggested to me they're worried because their families are not able now to deal with some of the care responsibilities. Yes. Maybe you'd like to flesh some of that out for us, Dave?
Yeah, certainly. I've certainly spoken to a resident of Burse who for a number of weeks had to go and live with her mother outside this area, away from this area, because of her care requirements. And for a number of weeks, she's had to move away from the area and live with her mother because the care can't reach her, and the people that help her live her life, people that walk her dog, simple things, they are not prepared or can't get to her house in order to help her out. And I think that there are other families. There was a very long post on the Fix Aboyne Bridge Action Group Facebook page from a guy who's recently moved to the area. His wife's just had a baby, and the pain and suffering, if that's not putting it too strong, for their family is significant. But as you rightly say, I'm not here as a spokesperson for Scottish Fire and Rescue, but I am a crew commander with the Fire and Rescue Service on the retained duty system. So I'm an on-call firefighter. And, myself and colleagues have concerns about not being able to access properties, businesses, and importantly, the residential care home on that side of the bridge. That's a serious concern where any sort of incident is involving the fire service, time is of the essence, whether it's a road traffic incident on the South East Side Road or something involving a premises. The same goes for ambulances, and anecdotally I've heard of concerns at the health centre where doctors are maybe reluctant to make the 20-mile round trip to visit somebody in Burse. Well, who knows where that could lead.
It's fantastic to get your input in terms of the firefighting and emergency services side of things. So what are you looking for, Dave? What do you think the local community and yourself is looking for out of today with the drop-in session that's taking place? what questions are you wanting to be asked? What are the positives that you would like to see out of today, and the discussions that will take place regarding? I mean, I know for example, in a recent announcement from the council, they have said that the specialist consultants have now, there's a tendering exercise surrounding that. This is several months after the closure of the bridge. Speaking personally, one of my concerns is how the timetabling of this can be dragged out, and to get that refined, and to get the local population, the local community made more aware and kept in touch in terms of how we go forward. But for you, what would you like to take from today?
I would be delighted if the council appreciated that we are reasonable people in a grim predicament, and we just want good communications and honesty. It's over 3 months since the bridge closed, and incidentally I drove the fire engine over this bridge the day before it closed, and that's not to suggest that it shouldn't be closed, but a 20-ton fire engine drove over it the day before it closed. We want good communications, and the excuse that, well, we won't communicate with you because we've got nothing to tell you, doesn't really wash. An early town hall meeting would have been fantastic. We could have asked questions, and even if every question was met with, we're really sorry, we don't have an answer to that just now, but we've taken down your concerns, for it to have taken this long is not great. I think the council are in a tough position. Totally appreciate they're in a tough position. We're not unreasonable people, we're not silly people. But there were little things that could have been dealt with better. The positioning of the roadblock bollards, well, concrete blocks, they initially put them right at the end of that road, so there was nowhere to park for people that wanted to park and come across here. It took us 2 months to get them, to ease them open, as you can see behind us, for cyclists and people on mobility scooters to get easier access to the bridge and make use of the facility that is still here, the pedestrian access. It's little things like that. I think people more than anything feel that they're being ignored and badly treated, and that could easily be ignored. Today will go hopefully a long way towards getting some information from the council, but hopefully, fingers crossed, the communication will be fair-minded and the council will realise that we're nice people to deal with. We just want to have good conversations and be kept in the loop.
Yeah, and I think we all know that what has happened in relation to this bridge and the privatisation of bridges by the council, this particular issue is not going to go away.
No.
We know that because of climate change, because of the historical nature of some of the bridges, that this is going to be repeated, throughout a year. And I guess, would you agree with me that one of the things to take from what happens today at the drop-in session is very much to learn from what could be better practice, and
Yes.
and from that, so that when there are issues, because this will be a movable situation, obviously in terms of the timetable for what is done here, but that we learn from mistakes,
Yes.
that we learn from how we can make things better. Would you agree with that?
I would totally agree with that, and I think in the early days, I think if the council had approached this, first of all, they had to do what they did. There's no argument about that. What they saw, they didn't like. This bridge has a special construction and may be prone, we don't know yet, to catastrophic failure. It might not be, it moved a bit. It could just literally be a catastrophic failure. So we understand why it was done. But from our point of view, if the council had stood here and thought, right, we're going to have to close this bridge, what can we do to minimise the impact of that? Can we provide a bus service? Well, we now know that there's no funding for that, but fine. How can we make residents' lives easier during this period? I mean, they weren't even gritting this pavement. There was two children. The parents came down to the concrete bollards with them. The children had to go back.
I was wondering, Dave, if there are any, as a local person that's very much part of the beating heart of Aboyne, are there any local stories? Because it's often through the stories that we not only learn from that lived experience,
Yep.
that local expertise of how things personally are impacting on people. Are there any stories that you'd like to share with us in terms of how people have been impacted and how they're dealing with this particular issue?
Yeah, certainly. There's a family who who run a farm in Burse, and they also run a farm in, I think, Orde or out that way. And as a direct consequence of this bridge closing, a guy in his, I think, mid-80s is now driving something like 400 miles a week because it's no longer possible to for his son to pick him up in order to go to the farm in Orde. And you know, for somebody in their 80s to suddenly have to make that kind of sacrifice is ridiculous. The road that we have to take if we want to drive via Dinnet Bridge is not a great road, and there's a number of people who want to get together with their social groups, again older people, who are not prepared to drive on that road. Certainly at this time of year when it's icy, there's parts of that road where there is no barrier between the road and the bridge and the river, for example. So they're nervous about that. And people with young families who've enlisted the help of their parents, the kids' grandparents, in order to kind of come to some arrangement where, well, we'll go to one side of the bridge and you go to the other side of the bridge, and you know, instances like that, as well as people actually buying cars so they can leave a car over there and leave a car over there. So, you know, I'm sure that there are many other stories, but people have been seriously impacted by this, as you would expect.
Yeah, and I certainly know from on the doorsteps, Dave, that there are families that have been split, not just geographically, but in terms of, as you say, the day-to-day way that they provided care for each other, as a family does to individual family members, that has been disrupted without a considerable inconvenience for some.
Yeah.
And we all know, without labouring the point, that in terms of if it does mean extra travel time and extra travel via cars, then that's not a cheap thing to be doing, is it?
That's right, yeah. I think one person related to me that if the bridge stayed closed for the 18 months which we were told it could stay closed for, that could cost his family an extra £20,000. Yeah,
That's incredible.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I can't verify the calculation, but that's what he'd worked out with the additional travelling that they were doing. It's phenomenal.
Thank you so much,
My
Dave, for your input.
Thanks for your interest.
And
much appreciated.
That's no problem at all. And we'll keep in touch because everybody is on the same page here in wanting the same thing. It's just how we do it and learning from where things can be done better.
Yeah,
so
sure.
thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.